Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
And I'm your co-host, David.
And today we are doing part 2 of our episode about Air America.
Today meaning next week because we did record these all at once.
Well, you don't have to break the fourth wall like that, David.
I'm meta. I'm postmodern. Okay. I'm leotard.
You're ruining the listener experience.
I am Jeanette. Here's a funny story. Back when I was, I want to say 14, I came across the term metafiction for the first time.
Okay.
And I emailed some random ass professor at University of Arizona.
Oh.
Because it's like early internet days where you don't have access to like it's like Yahoo or Ask Jeeves. Right. So you're not getting good information. You're getting a GeoCities website.
That's true. I remember I had a GeoCities website.
You had what was your GeoCities website?
It was basically just pictures of me and Elise and Jillian that we posted with really obnoxious lime green backgrounds and sparkly stars. Yeah.
You get a lot of hits on that?
Yeah, about 100 total over 3 years.
How many of those were you?
It was all us. 100%
okay.
us.
You were not getting it. Madeline's social media career started inauspiciously.
Speak for yourself. How many hits did your GeoCities website get?
I do remember because my parents had the credit card. Do you remember when you could pay for a premium Zanga?
No, I did not know there was a paid Zanga feature. I did have a Zanga, though, obviously.
I remember, I think it was really not much. It was $10-$15 or something.
That's kind of a lot.
But I didn't have
Premium Zanga.
A credit card.
Right.
So I had to give my parents money to get a Zanga.
Wow.
I think I got 2 hits on my premium Zanga, and it was just a guy at the dentist show. Do you remember that?
I remember the dentist, yes.
Being like, I didn't know you were into discordance axes. You're way cooler than I thought you were.
Well, I was on Zanga, where I went to be bullied by other girls in the hardcore scene.
The Fresno hardcore scene, not great.
I know, they had some complaints of me.
I
remember them vividly. Too skinny, looks kind of like a scarecrow. And then I responded to them on Zanga, and I said, you didn't even go for the teeth? The teeth are low-hanging fruit. Come on. That's what I would have gone for. And then nobody knew how to reply, and that was it.
Well, okay, but so this professor...
Okay, so the Yahoo... Okay.
So she emailed me back her entire fucking syllabus with all of her books and notes.
Uh-huh.
Which was good.
That's really nice.
This is how I became a shithead who annoyed you all through high school, being like, hey, have you read this Jeanette Winterson novel?
I still have not read the Jeanette Winterson novel.
But no, today we are talking, this is part 2, this is the Madeline part.
Today we are doing my part of the research for Air America.
It's Golden Triangle shit.
We're going to talk about the Golden Triangle. We're going to talk about drug smuggling. We're going to talk about Laos. We're going to talk about the Hmong population being completely fucked over by the CIA, one of many, many people and places that the CIA just devastated, left in its wake, and went on to destroy another country with little regard to what was left in the country they had just destroyed. It's like if you're in a car with your mom, and you're like, oh, I want McDonald's, and they're like, we have food at home. It's like somebody needs to tell the CIA, we have destruction and coup and overthrow and ruin at home.
Are you saying that the CIA should get more involved on U.S. soil?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying let's turn it domestic, baby.
They're already doing it, somewhat famously.
Domestic is the FBI. Foreign is the CIA.
I will say, we mentioned briefly in this episode, the Phoenix program stuff, and you know who came out of the Phoenix program?
Who?
Daryl fucking Gates.
Who's Daryl Gates?
He was police chief of the LAPD for many years.
Guy.
Famously, got his picture taken during the war on drugs with Nancy Reagan.
I do remember
this guy innovated the SWAT team. I'm gonna go ahead and say,
not our favorite guy.
Came out of CIA counterinsurgency.
Yeah.
Insurgency.
Insurgent she, David.
The feminist.
She can be a counterinsurgent too. It is 2024.
We were just talking earlier about how 2024, the equivalent of feminist flame wars is like women can be abject too.
Yes, we were, because I was watching that show, Kevin Can Fuck Himself, and at first I was like, this is a great, like, feminist statement. The show was set up so that it's about a woman and her husband, if you haven't seen it, and every time the husband is in frame, the lighting is really bright, and the staging looks very much like a sitcom, and there's a laugh track, and he does all these horrible things to her, but there's a laugh track, and everybody's laughing, and it's like she's just the butt of all the jokes, and it's all about him. But the second he leaves, it turns into, like, a very normal show with darker lighting, and it becomes very dramatic, and she's like, my husband is abusive, and I hate him. And I was like, oh, this is a good setup. But then towards the end of the first season, and it feels like it's taking a tonal shift where it's like, but what if she's just selfish and bad? And I'm like, honestly, you didn't need to get that next level with it. It would have been way more effective if you just left it at the original plot device. But whatever. So we were talking about how women can be terrible too. And then once people in media started to realize this, they were like, what if we seized on that? Women can be terrible too. And it's like, we didn't get long enough of the women not being terrible, I think.
I mean, I think this is right. What I said is like some person is, what is it, Netflix?
It's AMC. It just got added to Netflix. That's how I'm watching it.
Okay. Some person at AMC on the writer's staff half remembered some Julia Kristeva that they read when they were like 19 in like a freshman seminar.
I haven't read that.
It was, you know, women can be abject too. Right. 1970s.
Yes.
And also wrote a horrible fucked up essay called Oriental Women.
Oh, it sounds terrible. Okay.
It's not great.
All right.
And they half remembered this Julia Kristeva thing. Women can be abject.
And they were like, we're just going to do it.
We're going to do that show.
We're just going to do woman bad as though it's revolutionary. Woman bad is seldom revolutionary.
It's a way of being like, we are mired in like the same moral complexities as everyone else.
That's why I said seldom and never.
It's boring to me.
It's a bit boring. Woman bad is boring to me most of the time, unless it's like Nancy Reagan, and you're like, woman really bad. Woman very bad. Margaret Thatcher, woman very bad.
I have a deep fascination with the movie Me You Madness.
I don't know what that is.
That was what's her name, who was married to some like Trump official, made a murder, like I'm a sociopathic sex nerd. Oh, I introduced you to sex nerds.
Yeah, that was a big concept over the weekend.
Yeah.
A sex nerd as an idea. I think you don't even need to explain it. People will just know.
No, you just know.
If you've met a sex nerd, you know what a sex nerd is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into the episode. All right. So the main thing I always think about when I think about Air America is Vietnam and Laos. This is what always comes to mind.
That's like their most conspicuous.
They were very conspicuous during this period. Yeah. So the thing that we're really going to talk about is from 1959 to 1975, the Laotian War. But you can't talk about the Laotian War without talking about Vietnam.
Yeah, they are very connected.
They are extremely connected. They are geographically connected, but also in terms of military strategy and goals for the United States, they are connected. So, you know, we're going to talk about the Vietnam War. It's going to tie in, and it's all just going to kind of become one situation from a Western perspective that we are engaging in. Mm-hmm. So from 1959 to 1975, Laos was engaged in a revolutionary civil war, and this was between the communist Pathet Lao and the Royal Lao government. And this served as one of those proxy wars. The Cold War was going on at the time. The United States was terrified of domino theory, which suggested that if one country fell to communism, every other country in the area would fall to communism. And when we're looking at, you know, Asia, right, we've got Vietnam, we've got China, we've got communism on the horizon, lots of places, and it's terrifying for the United States. So we have the Pathet Lao and we have the communist North Vietnamese on one side of this conflict, and on the other side we have the United States and the United States controlled area of South Vietnam, as well as Thailand, aiding the Kingdom of Laos in trying to maintain status quo against the communist revolutionaries so that another country in Asia did not, quote-unquote, fall to communism, as the U.S. would say it. I would say ascend to communism, but you know, language is subjective.
Do communism.
Communism. Neutral language.
Some people are maybe going to spend a couple years beating up their teachers.
What?
Cultural Revolution.
Cultural Revolution. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, it's important to note that the United States had long been using areas of Laos by this point to assist in its war in Vietnam. And I like to summarize the United States war in Vietnam as that time the United States thought it was really important for France to own Vietnam.
And also, like, they were, like, It seems like really the thing with the United States was someone needs to own it. Definitely not the Vietnamese.
Definitely not them. Definitely someone we can deal with, that we are familiar with, and it was France, so let's just keep it going. France was our perspective.
And then that stops, so they're like this random Catholic drug dealer.
Yes. So, way back in 1857, Napoleon invaded Vietnam to support new French capitalism.
Wait, this is 1850, so we're Napoleon number 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Napoleon number 3. Why did you know that?
The very...
You know the years of all the Napoleons off the top of your head?
The Marx 1848 shit.
Wow, I know. Okay, yeah. So Napoleon III. Yeah, you're right. The third Napoleon. He's invading Vietnam to support the new French capitalism emerging, and we know, obviously, capitalism necessitates new markets, new resources, new labor to exploit. So this is around the era when all of the Western, people
they kind of tried to do a revolution. France,
yeah, yes, famously.
It did not work.
France has tried to do a lot of revolutions.
They're doing a revolution every couple of years.
They're doing a lot of revolutions. But around this time, it's important to remember that, all of Europe, right, is trying to go around and find new places that they can colonize to help expand their relatively new forms of capitalism. Because capitalism, relatively new economic system.
Do you know the CLR James theory about, the Haitian Revolution causing the French Revolution because it changed, the nature of the material relationship because of sugar plantations and sugar refineries?
Yes, and I think it is very cool. The Haitian Revolution is maybe one of the most important things to happen, in the past 200 years.
The first and really only large-scale successful slave revolt.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
That would be a good episode, too.
Yeah.
Right. So, the advent of capitalism, relatively new system, really kicked off this colonial expansion boom, and by 1883, France had totally conquered Vietnam. 10 years later, they decided to annex Laos too, and in 1887, they created this thing called the Indo-Chinese Union, and this included Vietnam, Laos, Tonkin, and Cambodia. So this lasted for a while until communist resistance popped up in China, and they started to fight back for their own independence. And we know communism has always been popular as a liberation ideology amongst colonized people. So this was looking good, and pretty soon people in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia were like, hey, we're kind of into that communism stuff too. We want to kick out these capitalist colonizers from our countries.
Ho Chi Minh goes to the Second International and gives a speech about third world liberation in the 20s?
Yeah.
At this point? Yeah.
So Ho Chi Minh has been pretty active in building up this kind of idea of communism in Vietnam as a form of resistance against their French colonizers. And by 1946, these resistance efforts had actually led to an agreement between the French government and Ho Chi Minh, famous Vietnamese communist, wherein Vietnam would be able to self-manage as a free state, but still under the French Union. So this is how people were really seeing the power of kind of communism to rally colonized people together to fight for their independence.
He's trying to do a Canada-Britain thing.
Yes,
okay.
But they're in this agreement, French troops are just going to remain in Vietnam for a few years to monitor things.
This is Ho Chi Minh trying to let France down easy.
Kinda, yeah.
This is he's slow rolling the breakup, where he's just
he's maybe we see each other, maybe we take a break, maybe we see each other less.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course, the French were actually just hoping to reestablish colonial rule via the military that they left behind, and this actually led to France just full-on bombing a city in Vietnam called Haiphong, killing thousands of civilians because they were like, no, we actually didn't mean it. We're gonna take you back over. Haha, bombing, killing thousands of civilians. But Vietnam was like, no, we will not go quietly into the night, and this started what we think of today as the First Indochina War. So by 1949, Ho Chi Minh was assisted in war efforts by the new Communist government of China. And the U.S. was like, oh, this looks bad for us, so we got to step in too. We're going to start sending in our troops to back the French because it's really important for us, the United States, to make sure that communism does not spread throughout Asia because this would be bad for our business.
And am I correct in understanding that, Ho Chi Minh, a lot of people in Vietnam who are, liberationist types, including Ho Chi Minh, were like, hey, United States, you should really like us. We're cool. You got the colonial stuff out of your country, and now we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And you did, July 4th.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah, so this was, a really interesting, mix, I guess, of I don't know, like, countries all have different motives and how they work with each other, and it's very, very weird. But what ended up happening is that by 1954, the people really on one side of the situation, trying to quote-unquote figure it out, was the United States, France, China, and the USSR.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of see the communist protectorate of China, USSR, and the capitalist protectorate of the United States and France, right? We have these two sides meeting in Geneva to determine what exactly is going on with this region. And the main thing that they tried to figure out was what even are the borders of these countries in post-colonial East Asia? Because France had just kind of been like, yeah, you're one region, now we've got this added, and it was just getting a little confusing and messy.
So you're saying that a bunch of European guys and like one Chinese guy, they get together in the immediate post-war period, and they look at a portion of the third world, and they just start drawing lines.
Yeah, shocking, right? Definitely not something that's ever happened before. So the end result was 3 different countries, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And this is, the Geneva Accords of 1954. This is also when they ended up dividing around this time, right, Vietnam in half at the 17th parallel line into 2 territories. The communist Vietnam in the north and, the colonizing French and associated allies like the United States in the south. And the Pentagon Papers would later reveal that South Vietnam, quote, was essentially the creation of the United States. Yeah. So this is pretty obvious. What we know is the United States was like, we can't conquer all of Vietnam, but we can do divide and conquer maybe. Let's start with the South and see what happens.
We love dividing things on a parallel.
We do. We really do. We had just had this experience in Korea.
Yeah.
We were like, we can't take over all of Korea, but we can divide and conquer Korea.
It was very successful.
Along the 38th parallel, we'll be in the south, and we'll keep those commies up north where we can control them and keep our eyes on them. So the United States was like, this worked really well in Korea. Let's do the same thing in Vietnam. And this is kind of what happened. And the French ended up withdrawing. And the two, France and the United States, famously kind of squabbled about whose way to control the locals in South Vietnam would be better. The Americans were like, France, you are so outdated in your colonization. You don't know how it works anymore. You don't go in and just do colonization. You do a subtle method of control. You're like, maybe we put in a guy who's sympathetic to us.
You do.
Who becomes a client
It's
state.
like a new, or like if you want to get fancy, like maybe make it like sort of Latin-y. Call it a neo.
And neo-colonial model is what you do. And France is like, you Americans are so dumb. You have no idea. You think you're going to go into South Vietnam and have some sort of partnership that ends up benefiting you and you still get to pull the strings? No. You need to crush them with force. You guys will fail at this, basically.
Is that my, like, it's also, like, de Gaulle is, like, president of France at this point, and he's, like, kind of, he's not, like, de Gaulle is not, like, third world liberationist guy, but he's like, this is kind of, like, I kind of seen the writing on the wall.
It's unsustainable.
Like, we're not going to be doing this. I'm getting an assassination attempt every other week.
I mean, this is really what Europe was experiencing around this time. Europe was seeing that there was a lot of anti-colonial, right, like, populations rising up, fighting for their freedom, and most of Europe had accepted that this was an unsustainable system that, if left to drag on too long, would be worse for business than just going hands off and trying to form diplomatic relationships with these countries.
Yeah, I mean, right, I get the impression there's a very funny thing about, like, the Algerian putsch. But, like, most of the sort of, like, old European colonial powers were like, look, we just want maybe, like, our businesses to, like, be able to have, like, these, like, maybe cool relationships with these places in a way that's exploitative, but not in a real...
Right. So, yeah, the neo-colonial model then was a softer hand, where these previously just outright colonial countries wanted to exercise control over these places, but they would do it in a softer way where they would be pulling the strings. And this is really the model we still exist in today. The United States is still doing a neo-colonial model with client states around the globe.
And the IMF.
And the IMF and the World Bank are also invested in this kind of neo-colonial model where you'll do, like, weird, sketchy business deals and money arrangements to force certain countries that should be sovereign, right, to become client states of other locations. So Vietnam at this time, though, this division, just like in Korea, was supposed to be temporary. They were like, we're going to reunify soon, I promise. But also, just like in Korea, the United States wouldn't really negotiate fairly to let any deals like this happen. Like, in Korea, what had happened is the United States kept being like, the UN's going to oversee the elections. And the UN, really led by the United States, was like, yeah, we're going to oversee the elections. And the USSR had to be like, that literally violates the UN Charter. You can't do that. So it's kind of like the United States is saying they're really working to try to reunify these countries, but just weird things keep coming up. But the United States, we know what we're doing the whole time, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, at this time, all throughout post-colonial Asia, communism, popular ideology of liberation, picking up steam. And the United States, the reason they won't let these countries unify, Korea previously, Vietnam now, is they know that if they let these countries reunify and vote for internal leadership, they're just going to go full-blown commie mode. Like in Korea, they'd already had socialist local provisional governments set up all around the peninsula. In Vietnam, we've got Ho Chi Minh, who's been leading this really successful kind of communist uprising for decades. Like, the United States knows. This is why they're doing the divide and conquer technique. Mm-hmm. They're like, if we let these people unify, they're going full-blown commie and we're going to lose the whole country, so we can't do it. So what happens is the United States attempts to back some local governments who are sympathetic to our interests in South Vietnam. We even, find a guy, we prop him up. We're like, this guy is going to be the leader of South Vietnam, a totally new country. Look at him go. He's so scrappy. But eventually, that guy falls out of favor with the United States. The CIA stages a coup, overthrows this guy, and they leave him dead in the back of an armored personnel carrier. They're like, he didn't work. What else can we do here?
I feel like, pro tip, if you are a right-wing kind of guy with political aspirations in a country the U.S. is trying to do colonialism in, don't become president.
Don't become president. It's a fickle relationship. We love you one day, we hate you the next.
Get an upper-level cabinet position.
That's pretty stable. That's not bad. And then you'll be picked to stage the next coup.
But, then you're still in the cabinet.
Right.
Just never be, anytime they're like, look, we're going to draw straws, I'm going to become president.
Just no.
Just, not.
Be absent that day.
Or just, pick someone else. Just be like, hey, Madeline's... She's real popular on the internet. People really like that.
She could be president.
Yeah,
we don't want that. Yeah, you don't want to be president of one of these countries. The United States will not be loyal to you. So the CIA stages this coup, and it creates a whole mess. And by 1955, all of this stuff leads to the Vietnam War officially starting, right? And the United States begins utilizing Laos geographically to help fight the communists in northern Vietnam, right, who are just like, hey, this isn't working. We're supposed to be one country. Get these Americans freaking out of here and give us our whole country back. So, basically, in the north, you have the communist forces who are Vietnamese, and in the south, you have the United States, basically, puppet government of whatever we're doing there, and this is really the battle. Also, the United States and the CIA in particular had been recruiting people within Laos to work on our behalf because Laos is geographically right next to Vietnam. And there's this thing called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which becomes an important strategic thing for the North to move supplies to and from, and it runs partially through Laos.
It's actually, a lot of Air America pilots have these, in interviews with them, they're like, yeah, we would be flying things over Laos, and we would see, Chinese and Soviet, transports below us, flying, the opposite way, because it's just
this is the way you go.
Yeah.
This is the corridor to move things along. And David, being from Fresno, you probably know what specific group of people in Laos comes to mind. Yeah, the Hmong people were people that, in particular, the CIA targeted in Laos to help work with us on our behalf. So, to understand us talking about a couple of different cultural groups in Laos that were targeted by the CIA in the United States, we have to note that, remember when just a bunch of people showed up in a room and started carving up the region and were like, this is the country now?
Yeah.
Well, Laos wasn't really a unified country with a monoculture the way we think of countries today, right? It was more a loose confederation of different ethnic groups of people with different cultural experiences who suddenly just got told they were one country.
They weren't so much an imagined community as they were a forced community.
Yeah, they were. And this led to a lot of different groups of people who suddenly were unified in this region, despite the fact that they're like, we don't have anything in common with these guys. These other guys we've been fighting with for years, actually. We hate them. And it was just kind of this conflicting situation of a lot of people who had some similarities but more differences than similarities, probably.
Madeline, would you say nationalism as a modern ideology about drawing random lines on borders and trying to imagine communities out of thin air is kind of bullshit?
I mean, look, I would say that nationalism has a place for colonized people fighting off their oppressors.
Until you become Chiang Kai-shek.
I would say temporarily. Yeah, I don't think nationalism as an ideology is enough, but I think that when you're trying to get the like working class together, or even just like get together a group of colonized people together, I think thinking of yourself as a country with sovereign borders and those borders have been violated by forces from different places around the world, I see how that is a great motivating force. I am not a person who thinks that nationalism is the answer to anything, but I think that if you, for somebody who has been the victims of, for example, French colonization, for somebody to show up and be like, we need to keep the French out of Vietnam, suddenly those borders make sense.
I'm just like, you can be a country, right? Like having like a political system. This is that thing that I've been hammering on about for a while.
Yeah.
Like having like a whole ass political system premised off of the idea that like because you all like use the same currency and read the same fucking newspaper or whatever, you should have like a state that reflects that.
Yeah.
That's dumb.
I mean, I think that it is something that has temporary utility in certain situations.
I tend to be like very fanon about it. Whereas like, oh, you will always become you become Chiang Kai-shek no matter what. You become like you begin to take.
I said temporary. I think it's a transition.
It's a devil's bar. Okay,
Oh, yeah. God. Okay. Well, whatever. So, whatever the case, in Laos, you had a lot of different groups that didn't necessarily have a lot in common with each other, and the CIA was like, we can exploit this.
Also, a lot of groups whose like rural kinds of ways of life had been largely disrupted by colonialism and their entry into the global marketplace.
Yes,
right.
But those aren't the people that the CIA was.
This is
recruit necessarily.
You're about to talk about the Meow or whatever, but they're like one of the Air America pilots, because they were flying so many USAID missions into Laos, at some point said that when a Meow child was asked where does rice come from, pointed at the sky.
Wow.
Right.
So the United States is coming in. France, I guess, before, was disrupting this. That is true. But the people that the CIA were trying to recruit from, they were like, okay, so look, most of the people in Laos, we've got this civil war going on in Laos. We have Lao communists. They're fighting against the royal Lao, right? We need to recruit people who are going to be sympathetic to capitalism, basically, to American interests, to the royal Lao government.
We got to get our guy in there.
We got to get some guys. Who are our guys?
Depending on if you're in the State Department or the CIA, maybe different guys.
Right. So what you want to do is you want to look for people who are in Laos geographically but have problems with the types of people who are likely to be members of the Lao communist parties. So who they find are mostly hillside groups.
Yeah.
Who have been it's, a lot of Laos is hillside, but the first group that stands out is one you had mentioned, the Meow. So these are tribal people who inhabit the mountains of several Southeast Asian countries. And remember, since the borders just kind of popped up around them, some of it happens to be in Laos. And there were between 100,000 and 200,000 of them. So not a lot, but they were always known for growing opium. In the West, the Meow were so well known for their drug trade that a popular phrase amongst people with political agendas in the region, it was, to have the men, one must buy their opium. And that's going to become relevant later. Now, one of the Air America CIA operations at the time was to supply the fortified hilltop positions that 45,000 of these Meow tribesmen were in, to send them supplies to kind of keep them safe while they were fighting against the communists in Laos. And the Meow units had originally been organized and trained by the French way back in the day. So the French had seen the same thing. They'd been like, look, we have these hillside people. They don't identify themselves as being Lao. They don't identify with the other Lao people necessarily. They just coincidentally ended up in Laos because of these borders we drew. These are people that we can really be like, you aren't like these other people. Drive a wedge between their connection with the rest of the people in Laos and get them on our side. So they had already been organized and trained by the French, and they were well equipped by the time the Americans arrived and were like, hey, do you guys want to do that same thing for us? They were like, yeah, same thing, different colors on your shirts. That's fine. Show up. And there had also been similarities, like the Americans had the green berets. I think the French had the red berets before.
The green berets somewhat famously trained by a few security type things with ties to the Nazis.
Exactly. That's the World War II shit I'm into. Then we brought all these World War II guys over here, right? So this is what was going on, and the Meow were just like, yeah, whatever, same thing, different colors, that's okay. Now, the Miao were primed by the CIA to harass, basically, the Pathet Lao, the communists in Laos, and also to sabotage northern Vietnamese supply lines along that Ho Chi Minh Trail we talked about that ran part of the way into Laos. And Air America also would pick up some of these Miao tribesmen and fly them into more conventional battles. They were also used to defend this one specific station that was super important in the bombing of North Vietnam. So we can see the CIA is coming in this war effort, and they are, looking for their guys on the ground that they can make sympathetic to our interests and get on our side. Now, the other group that similarly was a group of hillside kind of tribe people in Laos that the CIA exploited is the one David mentioned earlier, the Hmong. So the Hmong people lived in the hills as well. They were semi-nomadic, and they had their own issues with other groups of people that were now within these new firm borders of Laos. They were thought to be the most susceptible to helping Americans rather than the other Lao people because they'd had conflicts with the other people living in Laos, and they hadn't had conflicts with the Americans yet. So the CIA ended up targeting the Royal Lao government's highest-ranking Hmong leader, Vang Pao, to help them. Yeah. They're like, hey, look, you're Hmong. You're in the Royal Lao government. Why don't you go rally up the rest of the Hmong people to be on our side, be our guys, and help us? So he took American guns and money and training to the Hmong people and rallied them to fight on behalf of the Americans. And he ended up assembling thousands of Hmong fighters in the hills of Laos to help fight the communists. And this operation was actually the CIA's largest covert operation at the time. This was the biggest thing they undertook. And the only thing that came along that was bigger than it next was when the CIA started funding the Mujahideen against the Soviets in Afghanistan. So this was a big deal for them at the time. So at its height, this Hmong secret division of fighters was 39,000 people strong. But casualties were pretty bad. Like 10,000 Hmong people were killed in fights. The United States ended up having to resettle 100,000 Hmong people that were made refugees due to our manipulation and poor planning in the region,
which
drawing
is how,
them into this conflict.
If you come from the San Joaquin Valley or your most hated place,
Minneapolis, Minnesota, aka Utah number 2.
You are very, very familiar with Hmong people.
Yes, so that is why we actually have a large number of Hmong refugees today living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Fresno, California, where David and I are obviously from. These were two of the places, I think 2 of the 3 places that Hmong people were resettled to, and they have the largest population of Hmong people. And growing up, I thought it was very common to have Hmong people throughout the United States.
Like, when I learned, I think probably way later than is reasonable, that this was...
Me as well.
Like, the Hmong population of Fresno were very, like, cool, like...
Yeah, we would have Hmong cultural days. There would be traditional Hmong dancing. There was a very, like, noticeable traditional Hmong style of dress that was really cool. And, yeah, there would be, like, Hmong food days, you know. So we were exposed to Hmong culture a lot. And it did take me leaving Fresno and moving to Santa Cruz and being like, oh, wait, there's no Hmong people anywhere else.
Yeah, my mom taught at a preschool in, I want to say, South Clovis, with large Hmong population. And when she had cancer, the, like, Hmong parents brought her a lot of Hmong food to be frozen in her fridge so she didn't have to cook while she was going through cancer treatment.
That's so nice.
It's
really nice. So this is something that Air America had its hands all over, though. Air America was responsible for propping up this group of Hmong fighters with supplies, with transport runs, anything they needed. But, you know, this fighting was really, really hard on them. Obviously, spoiler alert, we did not win the Vietnam War. We lost. And these Hmong fighters lost right along with us, right? Back in Laos, following the war, the remaining Hmong people who weren't taken out as refugees were seen as enemies. They collaborated with these American forces, right?
There's like they were Coco Chanel or the Vichy.
They were seen as Coco Chanel in Paris, who collaborated with the Nazis. And a lot of them were hunted down and killed and seen as, like really bad people in the eyes of the Lao people who still remained. There was a genocide that occurred with the remaining Hmong people. And around this time, it's important to note, too, that Laos was the most heavily bombed country on the planet. It might still be to this day. During the war, the whole country was ultimately totally destroyed. So, you know, to look at what happened to Laos and what Laos is still dealing with to this day. They still have all of these, like, unexploded bombs lurking around the countryside in Laos that they're dealing with. We just really left the whole country in shambles. So, Hmong individuals who stayed in Laos started repeatedly asking for American assistance to come help them and relocate them. But the United States declined to assist after we got out the 100,000 first refugees. So one paper on this states plainly the Hmong continue to suffer the repercussions of joining with the Americans, and concludes the Hmong's achievement from their collaboration with the CIA was only the deprivation of human rights at home and unfriendly conditions that compelled them to look for better lives in the surrounding countries. Their uncomfortable life after the Vietnam War is propagated by the CIA's betrayal. The CIA was overconfident that they would be victorious over the North Vietnamese. And in 1983, there was actually a Wall Street Journal article that came out all about Hmong people attempting to acclimate to the United States, the ones who had been taken in as refugees. And, you know, they talk about a few different Hmong refugees living in the United States. And in this article, it says, when the war ended, Phang Van and more than 100,000 Hmong walked hundreds of miles to the border, braving currents and communist bullets to cross the Mekong River into Thailand. Many died trying to escape. Those who survived spent months or years in remote camps surrounded by barbed wire and patrolled by Thai police. At the time, the refugee stream into the U.S. was swollen with Vietnamese. It wasn't until the late 1970s that most Hmong began arriving in the country. They arrived with little preparation. Some used furniture polish for cooking oil, washed their hair with less oil, and tried to heat their apartments with charcoal grills. Volunteer agencies were supposed to find housing and provide counseling, but a government study found that nearly 1/3 of the agencies never saw refugees after their first month. Phang Vang arrived in February 1976, the first Hmong in Providence, Rhode Island. On his first morning, he saw his first snow, a cottony sheet that covered the garbage-strewn street of South Providence and reminded him of a warning of his grandfather's. Snow means death. He stayed inside the first day, sometimes startled by the clanging radiators in his third-floor walk-up and worrying about things he had never before encountered. Rent, heating bills, gas bills, electricity bills. So, this is really what the CIA was up to. They're just exploiting local populations and manipulating them into joining us and not really giving a fuck what we did to these people or to their country in the aftermath. But these were the types of operations that Air America was instrumental in supporting, right? So when we think about what Air America specifically was doing to support these types of war efforts in Laos during the Civil War, we have to start with the U.S. Air Force. So the U.S. Air Force was assigned the job of providing the Kingdom of Laos with covert air support during the Civil War with the communists, and this was done under the name Project 404 mostly. It's a little confusing because they changed the name a lot, but the most important thing here is that it's supposed to be covert action, hidden, secret, right? And if you just send in a bunch of American military planes, that's not very covert.
You gotta change the call numbers on that shit, right?
You gotta switch it up a little, right? So who do we think pops in anytime we need covert assistance in another country for some weird anti-commie shit?
Air America.
The CIA.
Some random guy in flip-flops.
Yep, some random guy in flip-flops who's associated with the CIA. So the CIA rolls in to this whole U.S. Air Force issue, and they're like, hey, we hear you, U.S. Air Force, have been assigned the job of going into Laos to fight the communists covertly, but you're not very covert. We know how to be covert. We've been covert here in Vietnam and Laos for a while, doing all sorts of stuff with the Hmong and with the Miao. We can help you with this. So the Geneva Accords had restricted foreign militaries from intervening in Laos, which meant that the U.S. Air Force could not just show up and do things out in the open. Air America, though, was part of the CIA and thus was used to operating covertly, and they were able to skirt these restrictions by pretending that they were not governmental in origin. And this was not the only airline that the CIA owned operating in this similarly covert, non-governmental way in the region at the time. So there was this one briefing that was sent around about the multiple different airlines the CIA was running. And I'm just going to read from it. This is a declassified document from the CIA's website. And they're just sending it to each other within the CIA to talk about, like, what do we have going on? Here's what we've got. So they say at the time, Air America was one of 4 companies which together carry out extensive aviation services in the Far East. They are owned and controlled by the CIA to maintain a national aviation instrument responsive to U.S. requirements in the Far East. The Pacific Corporation is a Delaware company which is a holding company for the others involved, and 100% of the Pacific Corporation stock is owned by CIA through private individuals as nominees. Air America, whose stock is 100% owned by the Pacific Corporation, is a Delaware corporation authorized to engage in contract and charter airlift by the United States Civil Aeronautics Board. Air America, in turn, owns almost 100% of the stock of Air Asia, a company organized in nationalist China under its foreign investment law and also authorized to engage in contract and charter airlift by the Chinese and to maintain a large maintenance base at Taiwan. The Pacific Corporation owns 40% of the stock of and effectively controls Civil Air Transport Company Limited, whose sole activity is the operation of the Chinese flag international scheduled airline in the Far East and has no activities bearing on Senator Fulbright's question. They were getting questioned at the time.
Okay, I have a question about two words in this. One, almost, and then the 40% thing. Can you imagine, like, you're like, so the almost. You're Joe Schmo.
I own a share of Air America. What's that?
That just seems cool. Look, it's in my pension.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, when you think about sketchy things, like I feel like people like understand this with Donald Trump. They're like, why does he have a company that owns a company that owns a company that owns a company? And you're like, oh, this is classic CIA shit, right? We've got the Pacific Corporation that owns Air America, that owns Air Asia. You know, it's like this kind of Russian nesting dolls of ownership.
I mean, I think, right, the impression you get, or at least the impression I get, is like, with that Chenault guy who's like, look, I'm just recruiting the drunkest guys in the Navy.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of my vibe. The CIA was basically, like, not lying when they were like, look, we just have to maintain airlines. You all can do whatever the fuck you want.
We just need people available when we need them.
And we need them a lot.
Right. So this document goes on to say, Air America and Air Asia act as a joint venture, with Air Asia supplying maintenance and much of the service to Air America under contract. In Southeast Asia, the majority of the airlift supplied by these companies is under contract between Air America and AID, which I assume is USAID.
Yeah, they're the ones who are, like, this is...
USAID is involved a lot, and we should do an episode on USAID.
Didn't we do an episode?
No, we didn't.
Oh, okay. I feel like we've talked about them.
We have talked about them. We should do a full episode. So the document goes on and says, there are minor contracts with the Department of Defense and the Thailand Border Police Patrol, which have no relationship with the Senator's inquiry. This came out, again, during the Fulbright inquiry. The main Air America operation is carrying supplies and people into Laos under the AID contracts, but about 40% of this effort is in support of CIA under the cover of AID contracts as well. Thus, in the company year ending March 1st, 1965, the cost of airlift to AID was about $5.8 million, and to the CIA, about $4.3 million. This is back in 1965.
These are $1965.
This is a lot of money. The AID portion is in support of normal aid programs in the area. The CIA portion is primarily in support of the Miao tribesmen in their resistance to the Pathet Lao and the North Vietnamese. The great bulk of this is foodstuffs and other normal supplies flown by Air America from bases in Thailand and either landed or airdropped in Laos. A certain amount of arms and ammunition are flown periodically in Air Force planes piloted by Air America pilots to locations in Laos in support of the Miaos, and occasionally trail watch teams on the eastern border.
Okay, the Air America pilots had a name for the arms and ammunition, which is it actually kind of creeps me out.
What is it?
Hard rice.
Oh, God.
Right, because they were dropping a shit ton of rice, because you said, like, the Miao had always cultivated heroin, and that's, like, or opium, right? That's sort of true, and sort of, like, as long as opium had been cultivated in Southeast Asia, but it hadn't been as large a part of the economy as it became after the 19th century and the Opium Wars in the mid-19th century, and it became such a significant part that, like, cultivation of rice and other, like, foodstuffs started to fall.
So we needed to come in, and we'll see this later too. After the United States leaves this region, drugs are even more of a major part of these economies. So document goes on to say, in Laos, light planes make further distribution of some of these supplies, and we had to move aid, CIA, and diplomatic personnel as needed. So this is kind of the day-to-day operations of these flights. Similar services are performed in the same manner by Continental Air Services, Inc., which is a subsidiary of the Continental Airlines. This is a straight commercial activity over which CIA has no control over than by contract through AID. All of these services are performed under the direction of the ambassador and the U.S. mission in how do you pronounce it?
I would say Vientiane.
Vientiane, yeah, that makes sense. And are coordinated between CIA, state, defense, and AID in Washington. In Thailand, Air America has contracts primarily for the movement of U.S. personnel, but also, as noted above, to service the Border Police Patrol. In South Vietnam, Air America has aid contracts to service both CIA and aid programs. They conclude by saying the rationale for maintaining Air America is its responsiveness to national requirements, the fact that it can be caused to take commercial risks or losses that a private company would not accept, its unique ability to perform complex aviation maintenance under Southeast Asian conditions, its area knowledge and experience, and the security of its personnel and their willingness to undertake flights that are extra hazardous. Basically, that these are just insane cowboys who are drunk all the time and will take on any job.
Yeah, that's the
general vibe of these guys.
Mr. Pope beating his wife, and who had, by the way, been a cattle rustler at one point in Texas.
Wow.
That's the vibe you're getting.
Yeah. So it concludes both from the nature of the terrain and the airstrips involved and the frequent ground fire experience, particularly in Laos. Companies like Continental Air Services, Inc. can perform a large amount of this on a commercial basis, but cannot be counted on in an emergency to the same extent we can depend on Air America. Insofar as possible, however, Air America operates on a normal commercial basis and no subsidy as such is required for its support. So what we're learning from this is they're like, look, we can't just contract regular airlines. We need our own guys. Our own guys are going to go into these super hazardous areas. They are going to deal with getting shot at. They are going to deal with this really hazardous terrain. They're going to be on call in a second if we need something. We need these guys here. This is really important. And also, added bonus, when we don't use them, they're just a regular commercial airline. So everyday regular people can also be flying on Air America during this time.
Oh yeah, no, there are a lot of reports of people who are like, I didn't like the stewardesses, a lot of them like didn't know on like commercial flights. They're like, I work for who?
Yeah.
Like,
this is totally true. So they were like, we have to keep running them as commercial airlines because it makes it covert. Nobody will know what we're up to. Teehee. But they were not actually being covert. Everybody knew what they were up to.
Gibbons gotta get somewhere.
We have to bring the Gibbons. No.
Yeah.
But Laos and Vietnam and everybody was just like, oh, we know you're the CIA. So, yeah, most of the communist troops knew what Air America was up to. One Air America pilot, Charles O. Davis, wrote in his memoir, I am constantly picking my way through squall lines, and always heading for the lightest cloud cover. I head for the light and hope that when I get there, I can see another opening and another light showing on the other side with any sort of accepted visibility. Because remember, hazardous terrain. In addition to keeping my helicopter right side up and not splattered on the side of the mountain, I have to keep in mind the planned general direction as well as be aware of where the path at Lao are located. Because many Air American aircrafts were shut down or at the very least fired upon heavily. Pilots were required to check in every 30 minutes to confirm their status because these things were getting shot down so often. At one point, the CIA had to issue an additional $21.40 in hourly pay for people flying these planes due to this increased danger. And again, this is back in like 1960s money. And that was on top of hazard pay.
The number of pilots who are like, oh God, I can't remember which pilot, but he says something like, yeah, I like flew this mission, I think it's in Vietnam, and I came back and there were 25 bullet holes in my plane, and I didn't even know how they got there. I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, $21 even in 1965 dollars.
Well, we'll get into this later. Some of these guys were making a lot of money doing this. So further south in Laos, Air America also flew out of the CIA operations headquarters at Paxi, which made it even more obvious that they are CIA. In 1958, Laos had ended up having these National Assembly elections, and this was another way that Air America really solidified its presence in the region. The CIA had organized this thing they called Operation Booster Shot, and the goal was that they were going to convince the Lao peasants to vote for their guys, basically, that the CIA had propped up in the election, these U.S.-sponsored politicians. And they were like, to convince the Lao peasants to do this, we are going to basically bribe them with aid and vaccines. So they were like, yeah, basically, we're going to go vaccinate everybody in Laos. And every time we do it, we're going to go, that was from the U.S. government. Here's the shot. That was from the U.S. government. Oh, giving you a shot. That was from the U.S. government.
They're doing like a Pavlovian thing to people.
Yeah, they're like, you get something positive. You get rice. You get food. You get medicine. That was from the U.S. government. So that when these peasants go time to vote, they're like, oh, the U.S. government likes this politician? Okay, I like him too.
I'm sorry. I think the CIA is treating the Laotian people somewhat the way you treat fork.
Yes, but they're the Lao people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Laotian, I think, refers to objects, like Oriental. It's like an object thing, yeah. So the CIA was like, you guys got to get a lot of people all around the Lao countryside, the Laotian countryside, right, to do this. We're going to volunteer Air America to help you with this effort. You can use our airlines. So this is maybe what started in 1958, solidifying Air America's presence there in a really major way. By 1959, Air America was flying missions into Kankay, for example. They were assisting teams there who were building weapons ranges and training facilities for the Hmong recruits that they were going to use in this war. Air America was also, being contracted by USAID, which is the United States Agency for International Development, to help deliver humanitarian aid in the region. Which, again, I want to point out, they only needed to deliver humanitarian aid because the West had been fucking up these regions for so long. So it's kind of like a Band-Aid, but whatever. And so Air America established its headquarters at Udorn in Thailand, with bases of operations in both Bangkok, Thailand, and how do you say it? Vientiane?
Vientiane?
Vientiane.
I don't know how to. I don't know how to pronounce anything.
I think Vientiane makes sense. I'm so bad with pronunciations, but that feels right to me. So, Air America pilots were considered at the time uniquely able to handle this notoriously treacherous and unpredictable both terrain and weather in Laos. Remember that document, the CIA was like, hey, we've got these really unique conditions here. We need special guys to fly it. Not everybody can fly this. And this is because, we think about all the hillside people. There were a lot of hills. There were a lot of mountains in Laos. There was this really dangerous mountain terrain. And also there was really thick fog that would just settle in where you can't see anything. The guy who was like, I got to keep my helicopter upright. That was no easy task. It was very hard to see what was going on. There were huge amounts of rainwater that would just dump from the sky seemingly out of nowhere. There were mountain hazards. You'd be flying through massive fog, not know what was going on, and then the second you see something in front of you, it could be a mountain. And that's why that guy was like, I got to make sure I'm not splattered across a mountain face, right? So these were really, even though they were wild, dangerous cowboy types, they also were pretty skilled pilots. So initially, when all of this got started, Air America's helicopter fleet was only 4 of these things called Sikorsky S-19s. That's all they had.
Yeah,
they started small.
Are you going through the whole taxonomy of the air? Because
no, there's so many details about
the
airplanes. You can find charts and charts and charts online of all of the aircraft that Air America acquired and when and exactly what they were. But to start out, the important thing to know is they only started with 4 helicopters in the region, okay? So to pilot these 4 helicopters, they got 4 ex-United States Marine Corps. Oh no, these weren't the pilots yet. They actually added more airplanes because this was not enough at the time, right? So they got these 4 ex-United States Marine Corps, something called an H-34Ds added between December 1960 and January 1961. And later they added a plane they were really proud of that they talked about all the time, the Helio Courier.
Oh, that's the one where they were like, we had a twin engine one, and plane nerds were like, that doesn't exist.
But people did like this Helio Courier because, again, remember, you have to think of Laos as this very mountainous, jungly terrain. So the landing strips were these really small, kind of dirt remote things. And this was apparently a very agile and small plane that they could easily land on these all throughout Laos.
Also, it could turn while landing. I feel like that was the thing I remember reading.
Yeah.
And
very agile.
Yeah.
So they also then later ended up getting 16 additional aircrafts transferred with President Kennedy's approval to Air America from other kind of military sources to increase troop and cargo lift capabilities. So they ended up kind of rounding it out with around 20 helicopters to their name, and they were like, look, at this point we need more pilots to man them than we have, right? We need more of these kind of cowboy type pilots to come in here to fly these rough conditions. What are we going to do? So what they ended up doing was getting Marine Corps, Army, and Navy helicopter pilots and crews. And they did this thing they called sheep dipping. They sheep dipped them, which means they transferred them from military control to the CIA. So they were like, guess what, guys? You're not military anymore. You're now CIA, and you're working with Air America. Because where else are they going to get pilots to fly these things? They had some people who were more civilian pilots, but... This stuff was way too intense in this region, so they were like, we got to get some of our military guys in here.
We've run out of drunk guys.
We've run out of drunk civilians. We need drunk military guys.
Well, I mean, it was first, like, the drunkest guy in the Navy. And then it was just like...
And then it was just like, we're hiring people. Mm-hmm. But in Laos, because the terrain was so difficult, they did need a specific type of pilot. So, over the following months, they ended up adding even more aircrafts to the fleet. This thing was growing really, really, really fast. And they ended up getting supported by the 1007th Air Intelligence Service Group in Washington, D.C., who would coordinate with the CIA to run these clandestine air operations and also sometimes supply men to fly the aircraft if they ran out of people. So they had this Lieutenant Colonel Adderholt, who was the one tasked with coordinating airlift in support of Vang Pao. Mm-hmm. Remember Vang Pao, right? Who was the high-up-ranking Hmong official who had been part of the Royal Lao kind of government, who was now coordinating all these Hmong guerrilla fighters. So in 1961, the newly formed Military Assistance and Advisory Group, which is sometimes just called MAG, in Laos coordinated its first contract with Air America to support American forces in Laos. And this led to the fleet expanding to include even more aircraft. 7 of these things called an L-20 Beaver Stoll, which these names I don't even know, which were loaned to Air America by the U.S. Army. So we're really seeing the CIA is running this thing that is kind of the military, but also technically not, and all the lines are getting blurred and crossed. And by doing this, the CIA's Air America eventually grew to be one of the largest airlines in Southeast Asia, rivaling Pan American in the region.
I love the idea, like, there's a point where, because of, like, the specific nature of relations in Vientiane, that, like, you could, if you were a press guy, you could go to, like Royal Lao press conference in the morning and then go to, like, a communist press conference across the street in the afternoon, and, like, Air American pilots' wives would, like, grocery shop with, like, communist people or whatever. And I just love the idea of, like, some, like, fucking Pan American person being like, dude, the Air America uniforms are sick. That's, you gotta...
Well, yeah, because you have to remember, like, they're adding all these airplanes, they're adding these new helicopters, they're adding these new pilots really, really rapidly throughout this period. It grows to be this huge airline, mm-hmm. and at the same time, yeah, they're running just as a regular commercial airline too. They're flying passenger service between Vientiane, Udon, and Bangkok. And the Air America employees, they've got uniforms. They're regular plain employees. They've got the Air America logo on their hats. They're wearing gray shirts, dark
I want to
gray
look up
pants.
these uniforms.
Yeah, they've got a uniform. It's just like if you're flying Pan Am at the time. Air America even became one of the largest business employers inside of Laos at this time.
I had to say, I'm not feeling the uniform.
Let me see the uniform.
Okay, it's...
Oh, yeah. Thought it'd be more... This, if we were really edgelord, we would have an Air America hat.
We could do this with our, like, weird right-wing merch shit that I've been trying to push.
Yeah. David wants to run Air America merch. But yeah, they were just full-on airlines. So, covertly, though, Air America just referred to the CIA and the United States government as the customer.
Actually, I'm just going to say it. The baseball hats are pretty sick.
Oh, the baseball hat is really good. Yeah, that's a pilot cap. That does look good.
Okay.
So, in this pursuit of calling the CIA and the United States government the customer, Air America was just like, yeah, we do whatever they want done covertly whenever they want. They will always be the priority. We'll drop anything. We'll cancel anything just to do what the customer wants.
Would you say that in this instance, the customer is always right?
I would say that, David. This is the one situation in which the customer is always right. It is if you are Air America and the customer is the CIA. So this included, of course, running U.S. aid, humanitarian stuff if they wanted, or doing Operation Booster Shot, right, to try to convince locals to vote for the U.S. government guy in the upcoming election. It also included transporting officers to and from remote locations, including secret bases, delivering supplies and equipment and weapons to the Hmong guerrilla fighters, transporting the Royal Lao Army, providing their weapons and assistance to them. Sometimes they even supported PSYOP programs where they would drop leaflets over mm-hmm. North Vietnam or the Lao communists, being like, haha, you're gonna lose, we're gonna win, you're losers, bloop, bloop, bloop.
To be a kicker on an Air American's cargo flight, like the people who kicked the likes of, like, that's, like, you gotta love that.
Oh, yeah, and actually some detailed information coming up about how much those guys made, the kickers, which we'll talk about. So this is all the stuff that Air America, as they're growing their fleet, they're up to in the region, while still running just as a normal airline. This would be like if you went to JetBlue and they're also delivering leaflets
what's
over
the yellow one?
Spirit Airlines. I feel like it is Spirit Airlines energy, honestly. Spirit Airlines is like, hold up, guys. We're kicking these leaflets over North Vietnam.
Spirit Airlines, this is the one airline I've ever been on where, look, being a flight attendant must suck.
Yeah, it must be hard. It's
under
like
normal
service
circumstances.
industry, but you're trapped with them all.
The Spirit Airlines people, I will say this for them. They have been liberated to be actively hostile.
I love that.
to on the plane.
They are empowered. They are empowered service workers.
I'm not saying Spirit Airlines is the after a communist revolution airline,
but it's not.
Having a stewardess or a flight attendant essentially get on the intercom and be like, I fucking hate you, you dumb poor person. Fuck you. Here's your peanuts.
Feels kind of good.
Well, no, it feels bad.
But you kind of like it.
But I'm just like, I like that for you.
And yeah. That's good for them. Yeah.
And I will be the most solicitous, polite type customer. Because I'm like, they will spit. They won't spit in my food. They will just spit on me.
You. I can see that. I like that. They're like what's the one that's not Denny's, but they have it in the South? Waffle House. They're like the Waffle House servers of the sky.
They also have the Waffle House in Fresno.
No.
It was behind the old Barnes and Noble.
No.
On Blackstone.
No, that was BJ's Country Kitchen.
No, it was like the waffle kitchen. It
no,
wasn't
that
BJ's.
is not a Waffle House.
I don't know. It was.
Waffle House they all have the same building. They look exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I would recognize a Waffle House.
Lana Del Rey
pretends to be poor in them all the time.
She worked there.
She loves it.
She
probably worked there for 20 minutes.
I feel very bad for every other person who worked at that Waffle House for that 20 minutes.
Yeah, me too. They're like, Lana Del Rey is fucking up my day. So, all of this is what Air America's up to. But they're also very famously up to transporting something else in the region. David, what is it?
Heroin. They're transporting it through my crazy drunk uncle at Thanksgiving, ruining Thanksgiving dinner. Like French Connection shit.
Yes, they are. So to talk about this, we are going to talk in more detail about the Golden Triangle. So the Golden Triangle is pretty big. It's a 150,000 square mile mountainous region. And it is overlapping northeastern Burma, northern Thailand, and northern Laos. It's a landlocked region. It's cut off from local and international markets. There's long distances of intense terrain all around it. And that means that getting drugs out of this region, where drugs are grown and it is very easy to grow them, is super difficult. Local refineries will process and package the product, but then the only way to get the opium you're growing in the Golden Triangle out of there is to take it on one of two routes. The first is a maze of mule trails in the Shan Hills of northeastern Burma that would eventually lead to a 4-lane highway in downtown Bangkok, which would supply all of the opium you need to Burma and Thailand. Well, they're refining it there, so all the heroin you need, I guess, to Burma and Thailand. Or an air corridor consisting of scattered dirt like airstrips in northern Laos, ending at the international airport in Saigon.
Bet you one of those Helios planes would be really, really fucking useful on one of those dirt landing strips.
They're like, we gotta get a Helios plane.
We gotta get one with 2 engines.
Get one that doesn't exist. So from there, it would be transported to Europe and the United States. Yeah. So that's why you can see Air America maybe being really important, because this is the route that gets the drugs to the United States, is an air corridor. So you need a plane.
Through Corsica. I'm just saying, this is the route. It goes Golden Triangle, Sicily, Corsica, the world.
Yes, the Western world. So this area is the world's most important source of illicit opium, morphine, and heroin.
Until shortly after 2001.
What became that in 2001?
Afghanistan.
Oh, God, you're right. God, everywhere we go, we do this. This is the CIA playbook. I totally forgot we did that there, too. God.
Yeah.
You get so caught up in one thing, you forget that we're doing... It's just... The CIA, once you see their patterns, they just do the same thing over again, over again. And you're like, God,
this is why
so
when, what's-his-face, like, the San Jose Chronicle guy did, like, the, like, Contras...
Gary Webb.
When Gary Webb... And, like, the CIA was like, but no,
You're
what?
Like, CIA, we've seen you do this so many times. Of course you had the Contras running drugs into the United States and distributing them.
And I was just like, look, guys, I feel like the amount of shame, I'm speaking directly to the CIA now.
Dear CIA.
The amount of shame you feel about your identity, about who you are and your soul, makes me very sad for you.
They need to own it.
You're constantly denying your true self. And you can only thrive when you accept yourself.
CIA needs a self-care mission to love itself and say, we did run those drugs into that country.
Yeah.
We did that in exchange for men from that basically organized crime ring that we wanted to fight our wars on our behalf secretly.
Just
own it.
Be proud of it.
Yes.
You won't get tummy aches from mysterious Cuban ray guns.
So... At the time, though, when all this is happening, yes, it is the world's most important source of illicit opium, morphine, and heroin, and it is the source of all of the opium and heroin sold in South Vietnam during the war, in the U.S. part of Vietnam.
Is it my understanding that something on the order of 15% of the U.S. armed forces at one point was addicted to heroin?
Okay, I don't know the statistic, but that does make sense.
Yeah.
Because the U.S. armed forces in Vietnam were on drugs.
No, they were
a lot of drugs.
up.
Like, the United States was giving them amphetamines, because the thing that we see that's really interesting is that people don't want to kill each other in wars. A few people are really into it, but most people show up and they're like, ah! And, like, the military was having these problems with a lot of the wars for a long time where the soldiers would shoot above people's heads because they didn't want to kill anybody. Mm-hmm. And so they would literally have to get people high as shit on amphetamines and get them all crazy-eyed to make them even okay with killing somebody in a war. So, basically, we had all the soldiers speedballing.
That's why...
They'd be up on amphetamines, they'd come down with heroin. I mean, it was... a mess, and these were kids, a lot of them, 18-year-olds, just totally traumatized by this experience, just high as shit, freaking out in the worst hellscape war zone.
And I'm also like,
life.
Right, granting the uneven economic distribution of the U.S. draft.
Yes.
That means that a bunch of poor kids who couldn't get a deferment for like college or whatever bullshit, or what's the bone strippers or whatever Trump was talking about.
There were all these ways rich people got their kids out of the draft,
which they have historically done in every war. Which is why there's no such thing. Like, all wars are a rich man's war, a poor man's fight. Yada yada yada. But right, I gotta imagine, like, you're like a poor guy from some place. Let's North Dakota.
Utah, okay. Number 1. The real Utah?
Oh, okay. Like, and you wind up... Yeah, you're from North Dakota.
Yeah.
And you wind up in Vietnam.
Right.
I haven't been to either of those places.
I've been to North Dakota.
I know from pictures.
Right.
They're very different places.
They're very different. I mean, and then you gotta kill a bunch of people and everybody's dying around you.
Yeah.
You'd have to be on drugs to survive that, I think. That is... It's horrifying. And Utah is Utah number 1, because Utah number 2 is what I am turning Minnesota into when I inevitably overtake it in the Madeline versus Minnesota war.
Let's imagine.
So regular Utah will be Utah number 1. Minnesota will become Utah number 2, my favorite state, when I conquer it.
The lakes are all going to the LA River. Let's imagine you're like a CIA guy.
Yes.
And you're like doing Phoenix program stuff. Mm-hmm. You're dropping a Viet Cong guy out of a helicopter like 3 times a day.
This is another thing the CIA does over and over and over again.
Which, like, also, by the way, Air America helped with the Phoenix program.
Yep. Yes, totally. No, this is part of the playbook. We're going to take people we don't like and we're going to drop them out of airplanes. We did this in South America with Operation Condor as well, but Air America was not involved in that. That was after Air America's time.
Somewhat famously, the French kind of innovated the helicopter drop in Algeria.
Wow. So... At the time, yes, it is the source of all the opium and heroin sold in South Vietnam during the war, which American troops are definitely partaking in because what the fuck? I would want to be high all day if this was my reality. Yeah. So it is no surprise that by 1963, Air America has become, like all CIA projects eventually seem to become, a narcotics trafficking racket. Yes, exactly. So in The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, McCoy writes, Air America began flying opium from mountain villages north and east of the Plain of Jars, which is like a region that's like, an essential kind of tactical region.
Laos.
In Laos, yeah. To General Vang Pao's headquarters at Long Tien. The U.S. Embassy in Vientiane adopted an attitude of benign neglect towards the opium traffic. So, in fact, the CIA was actually encouraging the cultivation of opium with improved agricultural techniques in the region. We weren't just like, oh, is it getting flown? I don't know. I can't see. We were like, yes, it is. And you guys could be doing this better. So they bring in a farmer from Indiana named Edgar Popwell, who David talked about a little bit, to assist with this. And according to McCoy, Buell used his, quote, agricultural skills to improve Hmong techniques for planting and cultivating opium. If you're going to grow it good, Buell told the Hmong, but don't let anyone smoke the stuff.
The funny thing about, there's an incident in the Robbins book with Buell where at some point he's like before he understood that he was working for the CIA, when he just was like, I'm a commercial pilot.
Yes.
Where he like goes into the Lao jungle and like just finds a random like American military guy with an unnamed white guy civilian just standing next to him, and he's like, who the fuck are you guys? And it's like, this is like the point at which he's like, oh shit, I work for the CIA.
Yeah. So he was a pilot, but he also was a farmer, and they used him in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So to traffic these drugs, the process went as follows. Air America aircraft would fly to remote mountain villages, and for all the airplane guys, likely using a STOL aircraft such as the PC-6 Porter or U-10D, or rotor wing aircraft such as the Bell 204.
A rotor wing?
I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means?
No, I have. I'll ask Matt. Like Matt once.
This is a guy we knew from Fresno.
Who is an airplane mechanic.
Yes. He's an airplane guy. We know an airplane guy, yes.
He will talk to you at great length about the variations in World War I aircraft if you let him.
Oh, okay.
But he did once lecture me for 2 hours about rotary engines on small prop planes.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. So we got a rotor wing aircraft.
Yeah.
So after this happens, Air America flies to these remote mountain villages. Raw opium gets loaded onto the aircraft by Hmong farmers who were trained by Edgar Popwell to grow it better. If you're going to grow it good.
Just don't smoke it.
Yep. Then Air America flies this raw opium to Long Tien, where it's refined into high-grade heroin. Then the finished product is loaded back onto Air America aircraft and flown to Manila, Saigon, or Bangkok, depending on where the buyers are. So McCoy says, in most cases, the CIA's role involved various forms of complicity, tolerance, or studied ignorance about the trade, not any direct culpability in the actual trafficking. But again, that's in most cases, not in all cases. He points out that the CIA did not handle heroin, but it did provide its drug lord allies with transport arms and political protection. So the CIA actually accidentally leaked a document to the New York Times, which is wild, that revealed the extent of their knowledge of opium production in Laos, which McCoy also reported on, saying, according to a former CIA operative who worked in the area for a number of years, the heroin laboratory at Nam Kyung is protected by Major Chow Law, commander of Yao mercenary troops for the CIA in northwestern Laos. One of the heroin laboratories near Ban Hoi Sa reportedly belongs to General Owane Batiknon, former commander-in-chief of the Royal Laotian Army, the only army in the world except for the U.S. Army, entirely financed by the U.S. government. This was at the time.
Yeah.
So, the reasons, speaking of finance, why the CIA was trafficking opium and heroin utilizing Air America all over Asia, well, it all goes back to the Vietnam War, obviously, and money. The Corsican Mafia, of course, had a deal with the brother of the South Vietnamese president at the time, who was Ngo Dinh Ngo, who was head of the secret police in South Vietnam as well. The U.S. Embassy in Saigon in South Vietnam wasn't able to provide enough funding to help keep Ngo's secret police functioning, though.
Yeah.
He was like, cool, thanks the United States for creating a new country, South Vietnam, that my brother is basically president of. I am in charge of the secret police. Will you give me money for my secret police? And the United States was like, ugh, about that.
we're spending a lot of money on some helicopters to drop the Viet Cong out of.
We don't have extra money right now for you. Do you have any ideas of where you could get money?
And then this guy was like, I know some guys in Marseille.
He really, honestly, he was like, I know some guys. Give me a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So, New is like, we're going to get money out of these sweet, sweet Laotian poppy fields. So most of Saigon's opium dens at the time had been shut down for a few years at this point, but he ended up using his connections to reopen the opium dens and set up a distribution network of smuggled opium out of Laos to help fund his secret police force in South Vietnam under, the American leadership there. So from 1958 to 1960, New used his connections with the Corsican Mafia to transport the opium out of Laos and into South Vietnam. But from 1961 to 1962, he started to use First Transport Group, who was flying intelligence missions into Laos for the CIA instead.
Okay, so it's another front cargo air.
Exactly, all those ones we're talking about. So New's right-hand man was able to enter Laos to set up these arrangements under the guise of just normal intelligence work that was aimed against the northern Vietnamese communists, thanks to the CIA program that had started back in 1954. So as McCoy reported, under the direction of Colonel Edward Lansdale and his team of CIA men, 2 small groups of North Vietnamese had been recruited as agents, so like secret agents, right? Smuggled out of Haiphong, trained in Saigon, and then sent back to North Vietnam in 1954 and 1955. During the same period, Air America smuggled over 8 tons of arms and equipment into Haiphong in the regular refugee shipments authorized by the Geneva Accords for the eventual use of these teams. So newsmen would send 10 to 12 agents into Laos after completing these special training courses, right? Just by New. But when they went to work with other people, other officials were like, why are these guys so incompetent? Like, these guys don't know how to do any of our normal spy military stuff. They don't even know how to work a radio.
They're just drug traffickers.
Right. So then they later were like, oh, they're here to smuggle gold and opium out of Laos and into South Vietnam. Oh, this is what they're here for. Okay, I get it. So the CIA was like, New, brilliant innovation. We see what you're doing. We're going to copy that, and we're going to do that in Laos too.
Okay.
So soon Air America was flying opium for Lao drug lords to help fund operations and curry favor with certain groups of people whose men they maybe wanted to take to also use to fight CIA kind of military battles against the communists in Laos and Vietnam. And they did this from this point until 1971. So to do this, the CIA was like, we're not going to go through the Corsican Mafia. We're going to go to the Miao in Laos, right? They're famous for growing opium. Remember when we talked about them? So according to a February 1970 article in Ramparts called Air America, Flying the U.S. into Laos, they said Air America planes transported the Miao's main cash crop, opium. So this is how we know they were doing that. We're just like, okay, we can do the same thing Niu's doing over there. We're just going to do it with the Miao in Laos. So after a decade of American military intervention, Southeast Asia became the source of 70% of the world's illicit opium supply and a major supplier of raw materials for the United States' booming heroin market.
That seems... It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's always the same.
It's always the same, just a different place. This is what the CIA is up to, and this is what Air America was transporting around and why. So, the end of Air America in the 1970s. What's going on here? In 1972, DCI Helms ordered the CIA to divest itself of ownership and control of Air America following the end of whatever they had going on in Southeast Asia. The war was coming to an end. They're like, when the war ends, you guys got to get out of there fast. It's starting to get hot. People are starting to notice what Air America's up to. Remember, they hadn't exactly been subtle.
The Christopher Robin's book comes out in, I think, 72.
Yeah,
right.
This is another thing we're going to see that we're going to talk about. People had been on to this for a while.
Yeah, apparently, the Gibbons thing happens because Robbins was actually writing about illegal pet trafficking. And,
and that's how he stumbled on all this?
Yes.
Whoa. Imagine that. Imagine that being your reality.
Can you imagine, let's say you write for Cat Fancy.
Yes. And then you're like,
and then you're like, these illegally smuggled, what are the hairless cats?
Oh, the Sphinx cats?
Yeah, I hate the ugly cats.
Oh, I like those cats.
Those are the only cat you like. I know a lot of people
will have those cats. I'm not allergic to them.
Okay, but so you're like, I keep noticing these hairless cats on Helios airplanes as the co-pilot.
What's going on here? And then you accidentally stumble across the CIA trafficking drugs?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wild. That was a wild experience for him. So when DCI Helms is like, CIA, divest yourself of ownership and control of Air America, let's get out of here. At this time, Air America was valued at between $3.7 to $4.1 million, which would be the equivalent of $30 million in today's money.
So they were like a good-sized type little company?
A pretty good company.
Yeah.
However, deals to purchase Air America kept falling through, and Air America was forced to dissolve on June 30th, 1976. That was after they had closed their operations in Laos, though. Like, in June of 1974, Air America closed down all of its operations in Laos because the Vietnam War was coming to an end. But, perhaps most ironically, Air America suffered the highest number of personnel casualties in those 2 years between deciding to shut down operations and actually shutting it down. In those last 2 years, 23 crew members died in flight operations. It was the most deadly time yet. Also, David, are you familiar with this famous photo of a helicopter evacuating staff from the U.S. Embassy rooftop in Saigon when the Americans lost the war and everybody had to flee?
Yeah, there's also, what's his name? Viet Nguyen, the writer, like the sympathizer guy that just got made into a, like, HBO show.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
It's like about like, Vietnamese immigrants in Los Angeles, but also, and it's a lot of things, but involves a lot of, like, last flight out of Saigon stuff in the first season. That's very...
Well, I had a boyfriend for 10 years who's Vietnamese, and he said that his parents actually met flying out of Vietnam because they had been in South Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So they met on the airplane leaving Vietnam to come to the United States when the communists won, basically, because they'd been in the South.
That seems cool.
I know, it was interesting. And he was like, yeah, my dad impressed my mom because he was like, I speak a little English. And she was like, I speak no English. You seem handy to know. Because they were just like, oh shit, now all of a sudden we're leaving. We're on a plane. Because we happen to be in the part of Vietnam that the United States carved up and decided was theirs.
That's so, like, I gotta, like, you're a fruit vendor.
Yeah, you're just like a regular person, like, and then you're like, oh, what the fuck?
Every time I see, like, the big fight scene in, like, an action movie or whatever, some Marvel shit.
And then you're the fruit vendor who shit gets fucked with?
Yeah, and you're just, like, you're at, like, the embassy or whatever, like, you've got, like, a hot dog stand.
Yes. And then you're like, what the fuck? Yeah, no. Well, this famous photo, it was an Air America helicopter in the photo, but it actually wasn't even a U.S. Embassy rooftop. Everyone just remembers it this way. It was an apartment building that housed the CIA officers. So one of the last things Air America did was park a helicopter on top of this apartment building full of all the CIA officers in South Vietnam, load them into the helicopter to get them to safety when we lost the war. And fun fact, since the Air America pilots technically had to be civilians in order to not violate the Geneva Accords, many of them were not eligible for any government retirement programs, and to this day, they are still fighting for pensions and benefits from their government work.
Can you have it, like, there, I think I sent you the story that was maybe from the New York Times that was, like, when this one girl's father died, like, she was told never to mention that he worked for Air America, because, like, it was commonly known that it was a CIA plot.
Yes.
But it's like, can you imagine, like, being at the Social Security office and being like, listen, I worked a lot of odd jobs. There was a gibbon.
I'm supposed to be here. You have something for me. Yeah, well, in 1990, Air America, the movie, came out, which I am going to watch probably tonight.
Oh, yeah. Who's the guy?
What's got Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr.
People got pissed at Mel Gibson for this, right?
I mean, the people are always getting pissed at Mel Gibson for this. Well, everybody did get mad at this movie. So the movie features a cynical CIA officer who uses Air America to fly opium to somebody who's essentially a stand-in for Vang Pao. And in return, the CIA gets a kickback from the drug sales, and the U.S. gets some men, the Hmong soldiers, right, to fight in their war. And in the end, we find out that the war was all actually a proxy war for control of the area's opium fields. And this is based on the Christopher Robin's book about the airline, first published in 1979, right, under the title Air America as well.
79? Okay.
But still, that's, So some researchers claim, though, that this movie is wildly inaccurate, that Air America never knowingly participated in drug trade, just transferring some raw materials, maybe accidentally. Others will obviously disagree, including people who worked for Air America and, famously, a CIA agent stationed in Laos at the time named Tony Poe. Do you know anything about Tony Poe?
No.
Tony Poe is a trip. He says he beheaded communists, then dropped their severed heads on enemies in northern Vietnam as like a freak-out tactic.
I mean, that is like Phoenix program shit.
Yep. He says that he asked the Mongs who trained and worked under him to bring him severed ears of communist combatants so that they could easily prove their body counts to the CIA. And he said he started mailing the ears to the U.S. Embassy, stapling them onto reports to show he was doing his job.
Again, I think about the random secretary at the fucking embassy who's like, you know what? It's a fucking job. It's a living.
It's a living, and now I gotta deal with some
ears. And they're just like, fuck, what manila envelope does this go in?
Right, and so he would just have this like plastic bag on his front porch full of ears that people would throw ears into, and he says, I used to staple them to the reports. There were bushels of ears at headquarters. Like, this guy's just like a weirdo.
Okay, so here's the question. A lot of the Air America guys seem like they like a tall tale. Do you think
this is confirmed by everybody is like, Tony Poe is out of his fucking mind.
He was sending us ears.
Yes. He also, the way he confirmed that the CIA knew they were trafficking drugs is because he was one of the only people who was like, no. Because I don't know, he's so principled or something like that. So a former U.S. aid worker complained, actually, that Poe refused to allow opium on his aircrafts. And once when they were already in the air and Poe realized there was opium on the aircraft, he told a Lao soldier with half a kilo of opium that he was going to push him out of the plane.
Damn.
While they were in the air, because he was just like a no drugs guy. So Tony Poe's a real fucking freak, man. But when he came back to the United States, apparently a lot of the Hmong fighters, right, that came to the United States as refugees, he kept in close contact with them, and one of them, I guess, got, similar to a situation you were describing, got arrested, and he showed up and was like, no, this guy is like a war hero, you don't even know, you need to let him go. Yeah. So a lot of like the Hmong fighters think really favorably about Tony Poe, even though he's clearly out of his fucking mind, and he is the guy that, there's been like a biographies written about him. A lot of people, when they tell stories about these Air America guys, CIA agent Tony Poe pops up in a lot of these stories.
I love the idea that for Tony Poe,
yes,
he's like, listen, I've cut off an ear or two.
I've dropped some severed heads on communists in northern Vietnam.
Heroin, famous for its feeling of euphoria.
Yes.
Fuck that.
Hate
Absolutely
that.
Not.
Yes.
No.
So, what exactly did the public find out about this? Because if you've noticed, a lot of these stories and even full books are coming out just a couple years after the war ends. So the earliest article I could find published about this was 1966.
Yeah. So
this was an article being published about Air America in the Washington Post titled "No Frills Called for On Spook Airline." So this outlined a team of nearly 600 pilots at the time, who were usually men in their late 30s or 40s, who were being paid $20,000 a year to fly for Air America, which would translate to $200,000 in today's money.
Okay, you know all the stories that came out recently about how hard up, like, American pilots are?
Yes, they're not being paid very well.
Right.
That's totally true.
Or it's like, oh, it's like a huge investment in education and training, and then you make, like, minimum wage, basically.
Right.
Can you imagine, like...
You could go fly for Air America and make $200,000.
There is somewhere a CIA front organization flying cargo shipments of, like, fentanyl or some shit, I assume.
Yeah.
I'm just saying...
Probably. Also, if you were a kicker on the plane, who's kicking things out of the plane, you wouldn't be making that much money, but you would also similarly be making, like, 6 figures, basically, to do this.
To kick things.
To kick things out of the airplane. Yeah, because it was a very hazardous job.
Mm-hmm.
Another article published in 1970 in a major paper came out as well. In 1971, there were reports coming out with headlines like, "How the CIA Runs Secret Airline in Asia." Obviously, it's not that secret, even in the 1971, kind of articles, which outlined government officials talking about it even. Like, one Miami Herald article that came out around this time said, They were interviewing like a government official in Washington who said nobody on Capitol Hill seems to know exactly what Air America does, but I can guarantee you we're trying to find out. Remember, because the government's always trying to figure out what the fuck the CIA is doing.
Well, they have their own bank. They have their own sources of revenue.
They've got their own drug trafficking.
Their own drug trafficking. This is, I mean, like the CIA, this is like when the CIA and the State Department have their little fight over like who's going to be president of Laos.
Right. It's an internal, they don't need anybody else. They're self-sufficient.
Right, like the CIA.
It's vertical integration at the CIA.
Their main thing is like, look, we're anti-communist. We think a lot of people in the Eisenhower administration, communist. That's wild.
Yeah, that was wild. They really did. They were fighting with everybody. They were fighting with presidents.
Kennedy gets into office, and like Alan Dulles is like, "Hey, I gotta update you on some things. We're gonna do a coup in Cuba." Just say like, it's not. Hey, can we do a coup?
No, it's like we're doing it.
We're doing a coup in Cuba.
We're doing it. Yeah.
Also, I've been talking to some like Algerian generals. Just throwing it out there. Right, they make their own.
They're making their own rules, right? So everybody in Washington is like, I'm sorry, what's going on with what? I've seen all these fucking articles coming out since 1966 about this Air America thing. The journalists know more than we do. We're going to figure it out. So the article outlined the beginning of Air America, like in 1971. They were like, here's what we know. It outlined everything they were up to in Laos. So it seems like by this point, reporters had a pretty good idea what was going on. And this is probably, honestly, a big reason that the CIA was ordered to divest from the operation as early as 1972. They're like, you've been made.
Well, remember they told Chennault when they, like, chartered the goddamn thing, they were like, listen, get out of this as soon as you can.
Yeah. This is a sinking ship. So the article also remarked that Air America appeared from the outside to be a normal functioning corporation with a Wall Street board of directors, thick carpeted offices in Washington, and neatly marked and maintained aircraft. Because remember, they were still running those commercial flights, regular flights.
It's just the call numbers keep changing.
Right. So Victor Marchetti, who's a former special assistant to the CIA's chief of plans, said the CIA created Air America. We owned it. It did our bidding. The top man of Air America, the man who built it, George Doodle Jr., was a CIA man.
What the fuck is that name?
George Doodle Jr. Yep.
You are a Laos heroin trafficker. And
yes, I am. That is true about me.
Okay, let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're just like a heroin trafficker, and you're like, listen, I'm Meow. I am going to do this for my family. That's cool. And then one day someone comes to you and says, we got news from up top. From George Doodle. George
Doodle. Yeah, exactly.
I don't, like, whatever language barriers exist, all of that person's credibility is dead.
Oh,
right
yeah.
then.
No, it's
George
a terrible
Doodle?
name. It's a terrible name. Yeah. No, it's horrible. I was looking up his name, actually, because there's also a name of another guy who was a CIA asset, who was a doctor in Laos at the time, but his name was similarly bad, and I can't remember. Like, maybe it was Noodle or something. I'm like, oh my god, but I can't remember and I can't find it.
You know what? We're not sending our best.
You know what? I'm gonna look. U.S. Doctor CIA Laos. Let's see what we can find. Oh god, he's Dooley. It's not Dooley.
Oh, Dooley isn't
Dooley's a
Dooley.
normal name.
Dooley's.
Okay.
It's just
he was also a CIA guy in Laos during this whole operation. So, Marchetti once saw an internal memo, though, complaining about how huge the airline had become. And he said that memo at the time that he saw it said the airline had more employees than the entirety of the CIA, and the CIA at the time had a staff of 18,000. So we know that they had surpassed 18,000 people in staff at Air America. So this is a massive thing that had reached ultimately around 170 airplanes in size.
I know that a lot of the cargo planes in the mid 60s or whatever, as they were becoming outdated in Southeast Asia, got sold also. Like, we covered mostly Southeast Asia.
Yes.
Got sold to, like, Congolese nationalist stuff.
We kept it rolling. Because they had to liquidate. Nobody bought the company, so then they're just selling planes. So Marchetti says the CIA was so proud of Air America that they once made their own movie about their activities in Laos, with Air America playing a big part. I need to know what this movie is, but he did not say the name of it.
Oh, by the way, it's now occurring to me, the liberal radio show. Yeah. Al Franken, that was the guy.
Al Franken,
the guy who got Me Too'd for, like, pretending to, like, grab a woman's boobs.
Yeah, he did, like, a weird honk on, like, the most, to me, that would be the most offensive way I could be sexually harassed.
I think while she was asleep.
Oh, God, it's horrible. I hate it. I don't like it. Oh, it was in a photo.
Yeah.
I remember he was like, ha ha. Oh, God, why are men so weird? Yeah, so another article in 1972 came out that was published in the Star News, and this was titled Air America, Flying for the U.S. and Profit in Asia. And they remarked that one brochure had said Air America was one of the most profitable corporations in the United States in 1969, and that citizen pilots in 1972 could bring home $51,000 per year, or the equivalent of $387,000 in today's money.
That?
Yeah. So I have a quote from that article. This is a section of the article titled Good Investment, and it says, Americans can also become air freight specialists, commonly called kickers. Their job is to push cargo out over drop zones. Salary is $1,600 to $1,800 per month. Again, this is back in 1972 money, so this is a huge amount of money. Qualifications: American citizenship, airborne training, experience with the U.S. Air Force preferred. It also went on to say Air America Inc. is owned by a private aviation investment concern called the Pacific Corp. Dun & Bradstreet's investment directory places its assets in the $10 to $50 million category and rates it good as an investment risk. Air America itself employs altogether about 8,000 persons, they estimated too low, ranking in size just below national airlines and above most of the smaller U.S. domestic airlines. So that means probably 8,000 people were above board and weren't CIA assets, and then another 10,000 or more were actually government agents. Formerly called Civil Air Transport, CAT, Air America was organized after World War II by General Claire Chennault, commander of the American fighter squadrons in Burma and China, known as the Flying Tigers. CAT played a major role in post-war China, supplying nationalist troops. CAT also supplied the French during their phase of the war in Indochina. Air America is commonly considered an arm of the CIA. In Laos, the CIA, for the past 10 years or more, has maintained an army of hill tribemen, mainly Thai and Lao mercenaries. So this article in 1972 was just like, yeah, here's everything.
And it's a good investment.
Which
I gotta say,
this is like wild to me.
I gotta say, if you are, first of all, this is the Harriman Brown, like, Nazi stuff is like a really good investment.
Yeah.
Right. It's always the same thing where it's like, listen, man, like, hurting people is a good investment. Being a part of, like, a weird security service? What, the CIA is gonna go away?
Yeah, come on. They're solid. Oh, also, I think you were right about the 1972 date that... Oh, no, this is different. So,
okay.
So the 1972 date for book publishing that you had thought of was Christopher Robin's book. It wasn't. It was McCoy's book.
Oh, yeah.
So this also was coming out really early.
And it was like his dissertation, right?
Wow, I didn't realize that.
It's the fact that, like, the CIA was like, hey, we gotta see your sources on this.
Yeah, for his dissertation. Well, as early as 1973, the CIA was also sending internal, like, memos and documents to each other, pointing out that the New York Times monthly book club had listed McCoy's book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, as an alternate title in their monthly book club select. And they were like, hey, this is a problem. This book is really getting popular. And that was as early as 1973.
Book. I feel like they should have been able to call someone at the New York Times and be like,
can you not? They've got half the New York Times at payroll at this point, on payroll.
Listen, you published it, or HarperCollins or whomever published it. Don't love that. Maybe don't make it a book club selection.
Right.
Just like, don't like.
That was in 1973, so people must have known about this for so long while it was happening. So they did end up dissolving, obviously, and I think something interesting about the legacy of Air America to this day. Humorously enough, another Air America company was founded in the United States in the 1980s. And David, if you had to guess what maybe the founder of this second Air America, Frederick Leichus,
so it's not the radio show.
No. This is an airline as well. If you had to guess what the founder of the second Air America, Frederick Leichus, was maybe arrested for and convicted for, what would you guess?
Okay, well, look, I can see your computer screen.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to guess Gibbons.
Yeah, Gibbons.
It was the fucking Gibbons.
It was drug trafficking. No telling if he named the airline Air America on purpose as a funny joke. That's my guess, because what are the odds? But from 1980 to 1984, he was convicted of using Air America, his airline, to traffic millions of dollars worth of cocaine from Colombia. And one of his planes was later seized and used by Minneapolis police to monitor Black Lives Matter protesters from the sky. It all comes full circle. Minnesota.
Honestly, I really love the conservation of resources here.
Yeah, they're really keeping these planes going.
These planes have got to be old as shit now.
They're just keeping them in the sky.
Yeah.
They're keeping them in the sky.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. If you would like to join us on Patreon, you can find us there at patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. For $3 a month, you can access bonus content there. But if $3 a month is too much for you to spend right now, we totally get it, and we're just happy you're here. As always, you can find the sources for this week's episode just by scrolling down a bit in the description.